Once unfamiliar with me, and I'll be your host for today, for at least for the morning, to guide you around the program of Amsterdam FinTech Week that it has to offer, and hopefully get you excited to join some of the sessions that we will be organizing for you, together with our members and larger network during the rest of the day. But of course, I won't be doing that all by myself. I've got a very kind host here today, Maarten Korz. Very much welcome to the show.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me, Don. Thank you.
Yeah, it's really nice to have you here. You're currently based in Zurich, right? So it's nice. That's one of the advantages, that we can actually do these things over distance these days. Although I'd rather have you here besides me, and we could actually have maybe a more decent chat doing it in person. But I think it's in any case really nice to talk to you again, because it's been a while already that we saw each other live.
Yeah, that's true, and it's a strange time. So we moved to Switzerland like almost over a year ago, and then COVID hit. So and I've never been so close, feeling so close to the Netherlands as the last couple of months. But you're absolutely right. I would love to go back and to talk to you in person and to see everybody there. Yeah.
No, so fully understood, of course. I think a lot of people find themselves in a funny situation there. What I think is really nice is that you were one of the first people in the Netherlands that picked up on the fintech trend really early on in I think 2012 or something in that area, or maybe even earlier. You started talking about fintech and actually making YouTube videos to describe what these trends were all about and which kind of companies were coming up. How did you end up doing that?
Yeah, well, I was working at the time at a large bank, the Rabobank in the Netherlands, and I was working at the innovation team, which was at that time, I started working there, I think in 2006 or something. So it was a really small team, very technology driven. It was within the IT department of the bank, and doing a couple of innovative projects, mostly technology driven projects. I saw also more and more consultants coming into the bank talking about innovation, and I saw what they are talking about. We know that also. We know what is happening in the industry. We know what's happening, which fintech startups. At that time, there wasn't a Holland FinTech. There weren't many Dutch startups, but there was a lot happening, of course, in Silicon Valley. So I thought, okay, let's make like a 5-minute, put a webcam out there, make a 5-minute talk each week for the people inside the bank to let them know what is happening on innovation. And so I did that a long time internally. And then at one time, I also started to do some of these things externally with a slightly different content, more focused on what's happening outside in the fintech industry. But it was really nice, and also for me to keeping up to see the latest news. And it since then it has been an enormous amount of fintechs, of course, everywhere around the world. But in the early days, it was just focused Silicon Valley and then London.
No, exactly. Yeah, I think it's really interesting to see that, because of course, fintech kind of implies that it's new that we combine technology and finance, which of course is not really the case, because since there were computers, they have been used for financial services, I believe. But I think that indeed that acceleration that sort of came from the US and via the UK sort of landed in Europe. It's really interesting, I think, that you've picked up on this early trend and were able to join that at an early stage to also help other people understand that. And this indeed, at some later stage, also where Holland FinTech jumped in to try and play a role in that ecosystem. So, and where did that lead you now, Maarten? So, what are you up to these days?
These days, well, yeah, I quit working at Rabobank last summer, and so as we mentioned before, I moved to Switzerland because of my wife. She got a new job, and then we thought. I was always telling people. To get out of your comfort zone, do something else, do something innovative. But for me, myself, I was working for over 20 years in the banking industry, of which the last 13 years in the innovation team. So for me, it was also good to take a new challenge. And now currently I'm helping companies here in Zurich, not only financial companies, by the way, but mostly big companies looking at their corporate innovation strategy and how to collaborate with startups, but also how to accelerate their innovation culture. And well, during the COVID period, I also had more contact, more meetings with Dutch people, and with a Dutch MBA school, Nijrode. We're also setting up a new digital ecosystems institute, and that's also all about collaborating, where we think that the future of business survival and the future of new businesses is all about creating these ecosystems. And that's also something where I'm leading the fintech track. So we try to see if we can just the way you are doing it, and in collaborating also with you guys, to see if we can get something there in the ecosystems of fintech.
Yeah, I think that's cool indeed, and that's why we also got in touch again and started to talk and collaborate again. And so I think you've picked up a lot of things, because you, of course, I think you're very relatively entrepreneurial yourself, but you spent quite some time within a bank. And I think you've also seen how, at least the Rabobank, where you worked, has evolved over time in their view of what's happening outside and the way that they would their own stance towards it. Mm-hmm. Can you describe a little bit how that was going? Because I think that's interesting. Because you'll be doing a panel today around 1 on collaboration within fintech. I think it's really interesting to hear a bit what you saw from a Rabobank perspective there.
Yeah, sure. So if you look at the, and I think that applies to a lot of banks, by the way, but if you look at the history of innovation inside our bank, it was, as I was mentioning, very technology driven. So the first couple of years, it was, we were just like IT nerds doing IT kind of things, mostly collaborating with big tech at that time, IBM, SAP, Oracle, those kind of companies, who really like to show off their new technologies and test it inside the bank. And these collaborations were mainly like a supplier and driven collaboration, so really easy testing things out. And when we did that for a couple of years, at that time, we saw that, okay, it's nice to do these kind of MVPs, to try to do these innovative projects, but it took a long time from idea to implementing it, and like over 3 years sometimes to get something to the market. And it not only had to do with the collaboration with IBM or Microsoft, but it definitely had also to do with the collaboration inside your company. So at that time, we were more focusing, and I got more focused on, okay, how can we improve the innovation culture within our organization, and inside helping collaborate between, for example, legal, risk, compliance, but also involving the business, not to get it IT driven, but focus more on the challenges of the customer. So that was.
But it's quite a tough job, I would say, because I think that quite some people were thinking like, why should I play along with this game, right?
Sure.
What's in it for me?
Yeah, and they were threatened by it. So they were thinking, okay, it's nice if it's like an IT in the basement of our company. It's okay, let those guys do that.
Don't let them out.
Yeah. But if you actually, you're not going to talk with our customers because we know what they want, and so that was really challenging. And we, for example, we made use of an excellent program, the Kickbox program, for example, where we helped our employees understand the basic principles of, for example, methods like Lean Startup, where they could not only learn about it, but also apply it in a very safe environment, but also going outside the company and getting out of the building, which was terrifying for a lot of people to do that. So, and that is also.
Did the kickboxing approach sound very non-threatening to them?
Well, at first it was, because it was we were starting with like innovation courses and master classes, and then I said, well, this isn't a very scalable model if we want thousands of people getting more learn about innovation. So we introduced this program, and that was most of the time, people who applied for this box and for this program were people who were really interested in innovation. And that way, I think it's a good way to start collaborating within your company, to have the people within, for example, the legal department or the risk department who are actually intrinsic motivated in innovation. And most of the time, actually, they were the most youngest people. And so we could create a kind of ambassadors network where they could find each other. We could present topics on innovation, where they could learn not only innovation, but also learn each other, which made our work a little bit easier. So to know the more innovative people inside these departments. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I think that's. I think you really need to. There's a lot of work to be done to actually change the culture around and make the organization make this move. But I think you came along. At least Rabobank, what I saw from it, has come a long way there in the end. And so, but how did that? If you would relate that back to, for example, younger fintech solutions like startups, how did the relationship of your bank basically evolve from that perspective? How did they engage with these kind of parties?
Yeah, so I think one of the first of these small startups was My Order, which was in the northern part of the Netherlands, in Groningen. There were some students who developed a new way of ordering beers in cafes, in bars, and paying by the mobile phone. So that was one of the first collaborations we had with a so-called startup. And what we also encountered was when, for example, the iPhone was introduced, the first app, which was the Rabobank kind of banking app, wasn't made by Rabobank, but was actually kind of screen scraping app done by a one-guy company. Yeah, so I know when we went there, we were just in a plain neighborhood, not in an office kind of building, just in a house. And his mother opened the door, so we were thinking we were talking to a company, but it was just one guy sitting in his room doing this kind of stuff. And that moment, it hit me that, wow, everybody with a laptop and internet connection can make this kind of stuff. And that's why we also collaborated with, for example, Startup Bootcamp, who was coming up then. They had a big fintech program in London where they started. And so because we wanted to know who are these, where are these companies, what are they doing, how can we scout them, how can we find them? And in the early days, there weren't many of them in the Netherlands, so we had to look all over the world. And for them, Rabobank wasn't a natural partner at that time. So being involved in accelerator programs like Startup Bootcamps really helped us not only find these startups, but also getting the culture inside our company a bit more positive towards these kind of new kind
to be relevant as well, right? So for
absolutely, yeah. So yeah,
but I think what I always see very often is that at the early stage it was a lot about ideation and sort of trying to get infected with the creativity and the sort of the building power of startups. Right, and I think, but I think it was an interesting transition, because what you described early was that you said, okay, but actually we did it much more from a procurement perspective first. We talked with the big tech firms who, helped us do innovation, but then when it became something separate with startups, it also kind of took a separate life. Is how I always see it from a distance. Is that you got a separate department that would just be talking to startups all day, trying to find new innovations, but would be increasingly also moving away from the traditional bank and the other colleagues, and therefore actually making it really hard to make the connections with the rest of the organization.
True.
And I think that's one thing that we see, what we saw basically being repaired over the past years, when people began to realize that it actually is something that should be integrated with the business, not something separate, just like with the IT department, right?
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that still that movement which you describe is still going on, because you're absolutely right. When we first started, we were just experimenting with collaborating with these startups and learning and teaching the legal and compliance departments how not to squeeze those companies. We learned a lot with My Order, where we first put them at long range of a company, then we bought the company, then we get it off again. So there was a lot of learning with the first couple of collaborations and the models of how to interact with these startups. But you're right, then the phase came where the innovation department got much more professional and became more like an innovation factory of playbooks, of things we learned ourselves, and it was like a real profession to be an innovator, which was actually a separate department of the other business. And now you see the move back where innovation is part of the business. They create their own innovation theses, and the innovation department is becoming more like a support role to help them, which still is challenging to see and to. But it's becoming much more people have their experiences of working together with a startup, or many times more scale-up kind of thing. But you're right. Yeah, that's absolutely true.
Yes. So one thing I wanted to ask you as well is that I very often see that for lack of a better role model, very often I saw a lot of people working at corporates look at how VCs are working with startups. But I always find it very funny, because I think that actually if you want to buy innovation, you have to behave completely different than the investor in innovation. But I think there's still a struggle to actually understand and use that difference properly. What's your take on that?
Yeah, you're right. So investing is something different than buying, but it also has to do with what is your objective of collaborating with a startup. Is it just getting to know each other, get to know new technology? Is it really buying a solution which you can implement in the market? I do think you can learn a lot from venture capitalists in a way of creating a portfolio of because what I think corporates still tend to do is, okay, where we've got one problem or one challenge, and let's pick one solution, and this has to work. Where I think that most of the innovations, you're not really sure if it's really going to work. You have to experiment with that. So it's always good to have a couple of things trying and testing. And so that way of thinking with it as a portfolio is really important. But you are right. It's not about investing in this and getting money of it. Eventually, most of the objective in collaborating with startups, of course, is to create added value for your customers or sometimes for your employees. So that's different. But then again, within banks, of course, we do have corporate venture departments who are looking at these startups as an investment opportunity. And I think that's also something which we need to learn and need to focus more on. Okay, how can we combine forces with the business who is looking for new solutions and these corporate venture departments who are looking for opportunities to make money. So within banks, you see both of that. Yeah.
No, exactly. Yeah, I think, but I think you mentioned something that's really important, which I'm not always sure that everyone's fully aware of. That's actually, what is the objective of wanting to do innovation, right? So I still sometimes feel that people just intrinsically want to do innovation, but can't tie it back into any kind of business purpose, as in, indeed, I want new products, I want to do better operations, or I want to be inspired, or, you know, and all these different goals, or, for example, make a financial return. These are all different goals that actually desire a different process to succeed.
Yeah, absolutely. Different process, and also different kind of investments you want to make, different KPIs, which is also extremely difficult to make these collaborations smart and to know, are we on the right track? Do we still make progress? Are we still... So these kind of... And it really depends on the objective. And also in the way what type of startup you are collaborating with. Because you can... Of course, you have to look at how is the team, what are the people there, what is the technology they are using. But it's also about, okay, if you are only using it as an inspiration point, there don't need to be maybe a culture click with the startup. It's okay if you can say, after a couple of months, okay, we had a great time. but be open to it with the startup. So, and I think in the early days, it was much like, okay, the startup, please provide us with an MVP or a pilot. And sometimes even the corporates didn't even pay for it, which I think is absolutely bad. So I think that's shifted in a positive way, where the relationships are much more mature today. Yep. And I think that's really powerful, and also for startups to really look at this bank and say, okay, but yeah, it's nice that you want to collaborate with me, but I don't see any added value in a collaboration with a big bank. So to have this open discussion is really important. Yeah.
No, I think so too. So maybe nice to also look a bit ahead at today, right? So you're having a really nice panel. I think you've got some great people there. So what can we expect there?
Yeah, absolutely. So collaboration, of course, is the key theme of this afternoon. And well, what we are going to discuss is actually the panel is all about collaboration. So we have people from Startup Bootcamp, from Plug and Play. So they are helping startups collaborate and accelerate. We have a couple of startups on the panel who can talk about their experiences in collaborating. I think, first of all, we are going to discover, is collaboration always the right thing to do? Early on in our discussion, we talked about, okay, you can also, as a startup, deliver a product and a service to a company and say, okay, we don't need to collaborate to get added value. We just want, okay, this is our product, buy it from us. So that's really, you can call it collaboration, but you can also, let's buy this and procure it.
I find that really interesting, because I do believe indeed that we should ideally move to let's say a higher liquidity in the use of solutions. And then you actually don't want to go into all kinds of courting procedures where you have to first wine and dine and meet the whole team and everything else and sign big SLAs. No, you just want to use the API, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that could be done in maybe a couple of weeks, and say, okay, let's do this, and we, because all these and mostly the banks, I guess, they all think they're special. They all think they are the exception to the rule, and so we have to add this button here or this function there. So that's the first thing we can discuss. Okay, do you need to have this extended collaboration? And we're also going to talk about, okay, what are the benefits of collaboration? What are the success factors of collaboration? What makes a good collaboration successful, but also what are the lessons learned? So what are things which didn't go right in the past? And we're also gonna, I hope, touch upon some different types of collaboration. So not only the big corporates with the startups, but also startups with each other, with scale-ups, collaboration in an ecosystem, but also with, for example, regulators like the European Bank or these kind of things, because that also needs to be addressed, and there are also some good stories about that.
No, I think it's really interesting to listen into that. I think it's a nice challenge indeed to say that whether it all should be called collaboration. Well, you could still do something together. While at the same time, there are definitely several challenges that require good collaboration to make it through. Think already alone about all the societal challenges now with fraud prevention, anti-money laundering, securities threats, etc., where you actually need a multi-stakeholder approach to be able to come up with a solution.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So really cool. So just to make sure everyone understands who are going to be there, we've got Sensidia, the banking scene, Startup Bootcamp, Currency Cloud, and Plug and Play at your panel, which I think is really a perfect lineup to have this discussion. So really much looking forward.
Yeah.
Let's just briefly also look ahead at what the rest of the day has to offer. Trying to pull that up now. So this is day 3 of the day. So of course we've got the Breaking the Ice where we currently are. We have a very nice event from Interworks that are actually doing a session on embedded analytics, which I think is really for a bit more for the techies on us, or actually if you want to know what the state of tech is there. I think a really interesting session starting at 11. Then at 12, we have a session between Connective Payments and law firm Van Doorne about strategic partnering to upskill and grow. I think that really aligns well with what you're going to discuss in the panel. So it's really nice to have this payments company, payment specialist, and the lawyers talking about how you could actually set this up in practice. Really useful session, I think, to join that. Then at 1, we have your panel, Maarten. At 2, we have the subsidy edition of the Shark Tank by MK Subsidy. So it's really nice to have that session as well. And then at the end of the day, I think also a really important topic, user experience. That's the 7 deadly sins of fintech user experience by Ergomenia, which I think is really cool as well, because I think it's you see that user experience is kind of the ongoing theme between all the solutions of what people are actually trying to create. Because in the end, the customer now is becoming pretty spoiled and really needs a proper route to make it through the day.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm really looking forward to this program. Anything that you're looking forward to as well, Maarten?
Yeah, no, I think the whole week is really great. Nice topics, great speakers, great startups, and well, I'm really looking forward to the last one with Ergomenia. I've met them a couple of times. I've done sessions with them, and they're really good at their job, and they're also really good at collaborating in a COVID period, because I think they are based in Hungary or something like that. Or,
yes, that's correct.
And but they are all over the world now, and they're collaborating and doing a good job with startups, and not only corporates but also startups. So I like their approach, and they are very open and sharing their best practices. So I'm really looking forward to that session.
Yeah, no, me too. I think it's and it's nice to see from that perspective. So here's, for example, you can see the overview of the whole week with all the highlights and involved parties. We really like it that the whole Amsterdam FinTech Week is a collaborative approach from all these parties in a network that just want to reach out, share knowledge, and are open to meet new people. So from that perspective, that's also a call to everyone who's listening in to really join in. Check out what all these companies have to offer, and also make use of all the tools to connect to everyone here. Because I think everyone's really, especially now that we can't meet each other physically that easily, we're really looking forward to actually just make connections in different ways and explore how technology can help us there as well. So we're also being pushed towards a new wave of innovation, I would say, from that perspective.
Yeah, which can be, I guess, it can be challenging, especially if we still talk about the collaboration part in the first step of collaboration, to create a kind of trust, which is really important, even if you do a small project with each other. So to create this trust using webcams and online, it's challenging, but I think we are getting there, and that's and if we know how to do that, I think it can actually accelerate collaboration and innovation a lot. So, yeah.
No, I agree. I think that's also where we're indeed heading towards a tipping point, where currently we're still doing deals based on existing relationships most of the time. Mm-hmm. And it's a bit awkward to do a deal, an investment, or a partnership with someone that you actually have never met in person. Yeah. But at some point, if we won't be out of this lockdown, let's say outside of these measures soon, we will have to get used to it. And I think then we'll be probably pragmatic and we'll find a way, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, no, cool. So I think, I'm really looking forward to your panel and the rest of the day as well. So, but we're already out of time. So for now, I'd really like to thank you, Maarten. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, me too.
Looking forward to talk to you a bit more in person sometime soon again.
Absolutely.
Be able to drink a nice beer together with that and extend the conversation a bit.
We will.
Yeah, those are really nice, and looking forward to see you again at 1 p.m. today.
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity, and see you at 1.
No, exactly. And for everyone who's listening, thank you very much, and I'm really looking forward to see you at all the events during today and the rest of the week. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.